bipartisan basis. But instead, as you know, as you followed this over the weeks and months, it's drifted off into a completely partisan effort to take $500 billion in cuts out of Medicare, $400 billion in new taxes, produce, in effect, higher insurance premiums for 85% of the country. Not surprisingly, that is not a bill that generates much enthusiasm on our side of the aisle. So here we are a few weeks before Christmas with the Democrats trying to squeeze every single one of their members to swallow a pretty bitter pill for the American people. With that, let me call on Senator McCain.
Well, I don't like to refer back to the last campaign for obvious reasons all the time. But the fact is that last October, a year ago, the President of the United States, and I have repeated the quote so often that I practically have it committed to memory, that when we get into health care reform, there'll be Republicans in the room, Democrats in the room, the C-SPAN camera. C-SPAN camera here. I think you should go right on over to the meeting there, because that was the commitment made, that the C-SPAN cameras would be in there so that the American people, quote, would know who's on the side of the insurers and pharma and who's on the side of the American people. Also, there was going to be a change in climate in Washington. I'd love for the President to come and meet with the 40 of us who are on this side of the aisle, and we could have a discussion with him about why we feel so strongly there needs to be medical malpractice reform in this legislation, why we feel that people should be able to go across state lines and get health insurance, why it is we think that wellness and fitness should be emphasized in this legislation, why it is that the trial lawyers seem to have dictated the language of this legislation, that in 2,000 pages there is no significant reference whatsoever to medical malpractice reform. I noted on the front page of the Washington Post this morning, and maybe it's the reason why the President is here, deals cut with health groups may be at peril. Deals cut with health groups may be at peril. Yesterday, we had a very spirited discussion on the floor of the Senate about particular deals that have been made, and I made reference to that deal that farmers made and that others have made. And there was some blowback that maybe that was an unfair characterization. Well, here you see it, and it's been reported in other media outlets. It's time to stop this behind closed doors routine that they've been going through in deal cutting. Let's do what the President said last October, a year ago. Let's all sit down together, Republicans and Democrats with C-SPAN in the room, and negotiate so that the American people can see what's going on here. It is not an accident that the longer this process goes forward, the more and more Americans are against this massive 2,000-page intrusion and takeover of the healthcare system in America by the federal government, which it could end up being. So, again, we are always glad to see the President back where he once worked, and we stand ready to sit down and meet with the President if he has time as well. And we'd like to have the C-SPAN cameras in when we do so.
Senator, what do you make of either? The White House argues that a vote is not the only measure of bipartisanship or partisanship. The fact that the administration has accepted a number of Republican ideas is also a measure
You'd have to tell me one meaningful idea that is not a motherhood kind of a thing that we would all agree to. Think of one idea of significant policy implications that would change the bill that went through the Health Committee or the Finance Committee that was accepted by the Democrats. You can't find one, because I've been in all of this debate and discussion.
Senator McCain, you talk about opening up the meetings, having C-SPAN and other cameras in the room. Though you know as well as I do that to get things done around here, certain things, not that there's anything awful going on behind closed doors, but that's how the deals are made in the Congress. That's how things are done in the Senate. You've been here long enough to probably been part of that. To explain
I'm sure you've been around here long enough to see the approval ratings of Congress and approval ratings of Washington. They're down 17, 18%, and I haven't met anyone in the 17, 18% category, certainly not back in Arizona. And the fact is that maybe we ought to do things different. And the President committed to do things differently, my friend. Now, whether you are of the opinion that that's the way business as usual is conducted, that's not what the president committed to when he ran. So maybe we should all just be so cynical that when politicians run for public office that they're really not going to do what they pledged to do. I don't think that the American people deserve that, and I don't think, frankly, that that is helpful to our system of government.
Could I just add one thing to what John said? I mean, the only reason this bill is behind closed doors is because they're trying to pass it with 60 Democrats only. That's why it's behind closed doors. If this were a truly bipartisan measure, all of that wouldn't be necessary. They have crafted a bill that has virtually no appeal to any Republican, and so they are left with trying to get every one of their ducks in a row, and so they're completely vulnerable to any senator who says, you know, you need to do this for my state, and another one who says you need to do this for my state. And as Senator McCain has pointed out repeatedly on the floor, I think all 100 senators would like to have the same opportunities if there's special fixes being put in for one state or another.
So are you saying you'd like to see the president come speak to you?
Yeah, come on up, John.
And could I just, you know, when we talk about these deals, who is it that's left out of the deals? The American people. They're the ones that are left out. Good example, the deal that Pharma cut, which was reported on the front page of several newspapers around America, that in return for their support of the legislation, the administration would oppose drug reimportation from Canada, which prescription drug prices could be as much as 50% lower, and would oppose competition for Medicare recipients by the pharmaceutical companies. So who got damaged by that deal? Certainly not the pharmaceutical people, but the American people did. And you'll find when the details of every one of these deals finally come out, and they will over time, that those special interests did very well, but the American people did very poorly. Yeah.
When the reimportation amendment comes to the Senate floor,
Yes.
there are a lot of Republicans who are co-sponsors of the bill doing that same thing. Do you think they'll be with you on the floor? Are you?
I don't know.
How many Republicans?
It's pretty. I have no idea, but I know this: that the administration and Pharma are pulling out all the stops to try to stop legislation which is clearly in the best interests of people who have to buy prescription drugs, because they are much less expensive when they come from another country such as Canada. I mean, there's no way you can disprove that statement. There's evidence of it. So they're pulling out all the stops. We'll see who wins here. The special interest, obviously the pharmaceutical companies. I saw a thing the other day, their lobbyist is very well reimbursed, I think $1.7 million. And of course, their campaign contributions and the ads that they are running, I have no idea how many millions of dollars in supporting, guess what? This plan, because they've done very well in this deal.